Looking to start a church, business, or nonprofit organization in 2021? Do you need help forming an LLC, applying for a copyright or trademark, revising church bylaws, crafting a succession plan, or developing a compensation package for your pastor and staff? Contact the law office of Travell Travis, a Richmond-based legal boutique focused on the needs of pastors, entrepreneurs, creatives in our community. Let's make your vision a reality in 2021. Visit TravellTravis.com. That's TRAVELL Travis.com. If you're concerned about the future of your organization when you step down, then where will the mantle fall? A biblical and legal guide to succession planning is a must-read for you. It delves into the scriptural and legal aspect of succession planning, characteristics of successors, the people, the process, church bylaws, common myths, even issues with nepotism. Where will the mantle fall? Written by Richmond's own attorney, Pastor Travell Travis, and available at Amazon.com.
Good evening. Welcome to Mantle Mondays. My name is Travell Travis, and I'm honored to be your host for this episode of Mantle Mondays, where we interview pastors, entrepreneurs, creatives, pastors, those who are in leadership. We learn about their stories, their triumphs, their challenges, to get to know the person that we often see the pulpit persona. We see them on social media, but oftentimes we don't know them on a more personal level. And so tonight, I'm honored. We're celebrating Women's History Month, but we're taking a 1 week exception to celebrate and honor one I consider to be one of the most innovative minds in the kingdom. And we're going to talk more about some of the things that he's releasing in the earth this weekend. But he is innovative. I consider him a creative genius, but he's one of the most humblest and sincere men of God that I know. One of the things I love about him, I reached out to him some years ago on social media. He had written a book, and so I reached out to him about coming and sharing at our youth conference, and he came and did an awesome job at our conference. But then he stayed after his session and backed up on the organ the next speaker. And I had never seen that type of kingdom unity and collaboration and support. And so I'm honored to have tonight. He is the pastor of the Deeper Life Church in Goldsboro, North Carolina, and the Mount Moriah Community Church in Raleigh, North Carolina. Author, entrepreneur, gospel artist, father, author, overseer, Dr. Aaron McNair II. Let's receive our guest star tonight.
Blessings.
How you doing, man of God?
I'm doing just great, and thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here tonight.
Well, the honor is ours. It's an honor to know you. It's an honor to see how God uses you, and it's an honor to call you a friend and brother, colleague in the kingdom. So how are you? Let me ask you this. How was your day today? I hear about so much that's going on in your life. How was your day today?
My day was wonderful, and it went by fast, and I think it's just the spring forward, but it went by pretty fast. Mondays are usually my day to rest, but today I had to get to work because we have a busy week.
And your church is on consecration. Now, it's not Easter or anything, but the Lord laid on your heart to put your church on consecration. Can you tell us more about that?
Absolutely. This year, our focus is closing the gaps. and GAP stands for growth, accountability, passion, and spirituality. And so this week, we're really just taking time to focus on some personal things that we need God to do for our church and for us individually. So we're consecrating this week, and we have corporate prayer this Thursday night, just 7 days of consecration. And we're going to be doing this throughout the year. But this is just the first week that we're doing it thus far.
And this is for both churches or just one?
This is just the Raleigh location.
Okay. All right. Awesome. 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 So for a younger church, you still find that it's necessary to still have time for fasting and praying?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And with a younger church, you have to be mindful of those who are not maybe not as mature or weren't grown or groomed in the church. So that's why we're doing 7 days of consecration versus what I'm used to, the 40 days, 40 nights.
Wow. So how do you make those distinctions? And I guess we're jumping ahead. I already introduced you as the pastor of Mount Moriah Community Church in Raleigh and the Deeper Life Ministries in Goldsboro, North Carolina. So as a pastor, you have to, it's not like you're one church in two locations.
Right.
You're totally two separate churches, totally different demographics, totally different, one's a major city, one is a, mid-sized city. Right. One maybe has more, I guess, millennials, Gen Z. How are you able to hear God's voice to speak and do things differently for two different congregations?
Wow. And it would be easier if I could on Sundays preach one sermon in one location and take the same sermon to the next location. Mm-hmm. But because the churches, as you said, are different cultures, different demographics, different backgrounds, different age brackets, I have to be very sensitive to where the church is going, the direction the church is going in. For one location, I am very focused right now on discipleship, and that is because it's a younger congregation. So the fundamentals of the Christian faith and the foundation, they're not really, versed in. Okay. Versus the older church that has older members and grew up in church and, already have that foundation. That church in Goldsboro is 37 years old. The church in Raleigh, under my leadership, is 5 years old. Okay. And so one is 5 years old. So it's a baby. It's a toddler. So and it's doing amazing. But I'm still very sensitive to the level of growth that needs to take place.
Wow. So let's rewind. How did you become the pastor? Let's do the first one, Mount Moriah. How did you become the pastor of Mount Moriah? And then how did you become the pastor of Deeper Life?
I became the pastor of Mount Moriah from being a son. And I'm not speaking biologically. I'm speaking spiritually. My father, when he first started the Raleigh location, we would do 8 a.m. in Raleigh and drive to Farmville, which is our main location, for 11 a.m. service. And that's an hour in between the two churches. He would do that every Sunday. But then we switched it to Raleigh being an evening service at 6 p.m. Okay. But my father then would preach the morning in our headquarters. He may preach an afternoon service somewhere else. Then he'll go to Raleigh and preach. And I've seen times where he would do 4 services a Sunday. And it was just a lot. So as a son, I asked to take that weight off of him. At first, it was actually supposed to be my brother, Pastor Sherman Blandon. But we drew our straws, and mine was the shortest. So, wow. I asked to take that location just to be a help to my father. Okay. Because the overall vision, he could not carry it by himself.
Okay.
Okay. And Moses, as Moses says, go find you some who will help bear the weight of the ministry. And so I just wanted to be a weightlifter.
So at that time, your mind was just, okay, I got this church, I'm good. Right?
Yes.
I'm work Raleigh, there's a lot of opportunities here, a lot of souls to be saved. The church is growing. You move to a new location, and then you get a call from Deeper Life. How did
Yes.
that transpire?
Amazingly, the very month after I started pastoring Raleigh, I was called to preach a youth conference at Deeper Life. And I preached, the apostle wasn't there, but I guess the word got back to him. So he invited me to come back that Sunday morning, and I preached. And afterwards, he said to me, I would love to bring you here to take over after I retire.
After
I
the
know,
first sermon?
yes, he said. Well, I've known Apostle all my life.
Okay.
Yes. Him and my father are great friends. He says, I know that you're helping your father, but I would love to bring you here. Now, back then, I was just thinking, okay, he thinks I did good preaching, and I didn't really pay it any mind, and I went home.
Okay.
After the years went by, the conversation came up again, and it got more serious. And then in 2019, the last Sunday of the year, I was invited to preach there. I preached there that Sunday, and when I was on my way to my seat, he came up to me and said, I want you to come back every Sunday in January. And I came back first and second Sunday in January. The second Sunday in January, he stood and announced me as executive pastor.
Wow.
But
he hadn't told you.
He didn't tell me it was going to go that fast.
Okay.
He was moving with the Holy Spirit. He's a man that's very integral, very sensitive to the voice of God. And then the next month was his Founders Day. My father came to preach his Founders Day. And on that Sunday, he said the Lord told him to release everything to me. So he made me senior pastor on that particular Sunday.
So how is it that this man of God was able to do that seemingly so easily? Why is it seem like others struggle so much with succession and handing the reins over to someone else?
Now, Apostle Simmons is one, even in his older age, is a trendsetter. He's always been a trendsetter in that region. He has always been a trendsetter, always been ahead of the game, always been an example to many. And so even after all this time, I believe that the Lord just has that trend-setting anointing on him where he continues to set trends. So now he is looked to in the region as an example on how to properly do succession planning.
I love that. So with everything happening so fast, did you even really have a chance to pray or even consult your wife? It's kind of like, here it is.
When the conversation got serious, me and my wife took it to God in prayer. Okay. And then there was some time in between me going back to minister where we didn't hear anything, we had already talked about it. We decided that if the opportunity comes, then we will move with it. After a while, we got the call to go that last Sunday in 2019. And then after that, it just started moving fast.
So how do you balance? I've seen your post about your schedule. People think, oh, pastoring 2 churches, you just show up to preach on Sundays, as you mentioned. But I've seen you post, I preached 6 times today. I'm like, I don't know how in the world this man preached 6 times, knowing how you preach. I said, how does he preach 6 times? But the training, the meetings, yes, laying foundation, the counseling, how are you able to? So one church is young in age, but then the other one is not young in age, but young in terms of your administration. Right. So it's not like they're in cruise control. They really require you hands-on, your fingerprints on both. How are you able to manage the weight of 2 ministries that require so much of you?
I think that, and let me say this, and that is that I was installed as senior pastor at Deeper Life in February. And mind you, in March, we went into the pandemic.
Wow.
So 1 month later, we were shut down. I've been telling people that the pandemic actually worked in my favor.
Okay.
Because whereas I would have to go in and kind of learn the culture of the church.
Right.
I kind of had to go in and shift the culture, because this older church has to now rely on what I'm used to: tech savvy, worship, live stream, that stuff. So everybody had to see everything from a new perspective. And so I think it was the timing of God. But balancing the two, I'm a person who's a bishop. I consider myself a very organized person.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the type of person that has to do a things to do list the night before you go to bed. I'm a person that doesn't like anything last minute. Okay. As a matter of fact, on last week, we taught on organization and prioritization. And organization is knowing that things in your life have to be in order. Okay. There has to be an order. Prioritization tells you what order to put those things in. And so I said, as a PK, I had already made up my mind, and my wife's a PK as well. So we had already made up our mind that one of the things that we would maximize and be very good at is being able to balance church life and our personal life. Okay. Growing up as PKs, we experienced the good and bad of being a PK, where our parents who have admitted, at sometimes they did not balance properly. And so we wanted to make sure that as the next generation, that we're able to do that properly, not leaving our children out and not slacking in either ministry that we're been given the grace to oversee.
So when you say that about, being a preacher's kid and seeing, I guess, the mistakes or whatever, are there certain things that you said you would never do that you find yourself doing and you're like, man, I said I would never do that? Or
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. Pastoring.
And then you do it 2 times.
I said I would preach. I wouldn't mind preaching. I'll go here and there and preach, but I said I don't want to pastor. But
how did you come to terms with that? I know you said the first Mount Moriah was to help your father. Was that kind of your way of, I'm just here to help, I'm not here to really be the pastor? And then God opens, elevates you to the full pastorship. Is that kind of how it slipped up on you?
Yes, sir. And I think also the innovative part of me, the creative part of me, really had taken a liking to administration. Okay. Putting things in order, which is all a part of pastoring. And so I think I fell in love with that. And I think the Lord made me fall in love with that. And so,
do you miss being itinerant?
I think, and I want to say this the right way, but I don't, but I do. I miss the itinerant part of me that allows me to go to different churches to do leadership training, leadership development. I not necessarily miss just going out to preach. Okay. I love the assignments where I'm going to help pastors. I'm going to help leaders, help leadership. That's where my passion is right now.
I read, I think it was a pastor in Atlanta who basically said after this pandemic, even if things reopen, he's not going. It's almost like he realized how much time he was away from his church and from his family, that even if things return to normal, he's just not going to do it. Do you find yourself, when things reopen, just saying no more often?
Well, I think that the pandemic opened the eyes to a lot of pastors to see where they were wrong in balancing. Okay. Where they were wrong in their schedule, and they saw that it wasn't really as necessary as they thought to be on the road. Okay. I don't necessarily share that testimony. I feel like we're doing a great job and we're getting even better with balancing. My family, Monday nights are our nights. My wife made an exception tonight because it's new.
Thank you. I'm so sorry.
But Monday nights are family night for us. And we don't do anything, but we hang out with each other. We play games together. We're ordering pizza, that type of thing. So we're spending Monday nights every week together. And we're getting to the place where our Saturdays are the same way. So that gives me the room for Tuesday through Friday. They understand that Father has to do Bible study on Tuesday. Father has to do Bible study on Wednesday. and father or mother may have to go preach Thursday and Friday.
Okay.
So that's becoming the culture of our house, but we're making sure that we balance that properly.
So in terms of you're a third generation or fourth generation preacher?
I am a seventh generation
Good
preacher.
Lord. Wait a minute. So wait a minute. How far does that go back? That's 18.
I don't know. My great aunt told me, I thought I was third generation. My great aunt told me that I am a seventh generation preacher.
How does that happen? Is it when you and I see certain ministry families, and it seems like there's a legacy there, you know, second generation, third generation, fourth generation. And I see how some kids just completely reject ministry. And then I see other children seemingly, even if they don't want to, they find themselves embracing it. After seeing the good and bad of ministry, and I know you said you didn't want to pastor, but what allowed you to at least accept your call to preach? Because you've been preaching now for what, 20 years, 15?
Yes, sir. I actually started traveling at the age of 15. My father would not allow me to preach my initial sermon until I was 19.
So what allowed you to, I guess even from a parent, and I'm trying to learn as a pastor with children, how is it that some children tend to embrace that mantle and then there are other children who tend to reject it? Is that a parenting thing? Is that just the grace of God?
I think it can be both. Because it can be the parents' fault.
Okay.
Because they did not properly balance life and ministry. And so because it seems like the church took parents away from the family.
Okay.
Then the children turn against the church.
Okay.
That could be one reason. Another reason could be that the parents were very heavy in church, but did balance properly. But the children saw the hurt that the church did to the parents.
Okay.
Which was one of my reasons why I said I'm not pastoring.
Okay.
And I saw all the stuff that your parents have to go through turns you away from that particular assignment. However, apart from raising PKs, my parents raised Christians. Okay. And so I have a sensitivity to making sure that I am in tune with God apart from just being at church. So I think that's where my pull to the assignment came from, that I have a relationship with God apart from being a PK. So I had to be sensitive to the voice of God and understand that I know what you experienced growing up, but you still have an assignment on your life.
So now you're a father, son and daughter. Is there a part of you that says, well, this legacy must continue? So is there a part of you that's wanting to guide them in the same direction? Or are you kind of like completely hands off? How do you, and I'm going to ask you the coming to America question. Is that mantle exclusive to the son and not the daughter? Don't go on with more questions.
Let me tell you, as a PK, I think that I would take the same route that my father took.
Okay.
That if preaching comes, I'll develop it.
Okay.
But as for me, I'm going to be raising my kids. I know I'm going to raise them to be musicians. that they don't have a choice in.
Okay.
But as far as preaching, I think that I will allow it to develop on its own. I don't want to be one that forces it or tries to steer them in that direction, because I want it to be authentic. And I don't want them to feel like they have to do it because dad did it or because granddad does it. I want it to be authentic.
Now, when people say about, I guess, as PKs learning to preach, I heard something negative saying that basically that when you're young, you're just mimicking your father. Mm-hmm. How have you, and you're your father's namesake, but you have made your own name. How have you been able to embrace that legacy, but then also kind of create your own name and brand ministry for yourself? How were you able to embrace but yet be yourself at the same time?
Well, and this may help any PK that's listening. I got to the place where I didn't care that I sounded like my father.
Okay.
I'm a son. I'm supposed to sound like my father. He's the one who raised me. He's the one who helped develop me. So I'm going to automatically sound like him. It takes time for people to differentiate between you and the one who you were birthed from.
Okay.
And you just have to let that time pass. Even now, and I've been preaching so many years now, it's still that, you sound just like your father. And it's not anything that's to belittle your ministry. It's actually a compliment. And PKs have to look at it at that way. It is a compliment for someone to say you sound like him, your ministry looks like him. It's a compliment for my father to say I remind him of himself.
Right. Okay.
So I think you have to just switch your mindset and how you see that.
So now, as a pastor, you talked about the negative aspects of ministry and what you've experienced and what your parents have experienced.
Yes, sir.
What would you consider? How would you describe a sunny day, and how would you describe a rainy day as a pastor? What are the days that make you like, okay, God, this is it, and other days like, you really, God?
Sunny days for me are Sundays after I walk out of the pulpit.
You didn't say what happened, just the fact that you're done for the week.
There is always a weight on you when you're a person who really studies to preach, really wants to be sensitive to the voice of God. So you're sure about what you're saying, but you're unsure about what you're saying.
Wow.
And you stand, and when everything is done, and you see the effects of the word of God, that's a sunny day.
Okay.
And I would say a rainy day for a pastor inevitably is Monday through Saturday, where you're trying to come up with or hear the voice of God for what he wants you to say on Sunday. And sometimes I heard one preacher say that this large Bible with 66 books becomes a little pamphlet. And it seems like sometimes you cannot just grab or hear what God is trying to say.
Wow. Wow. So with all the things that's going on, the pastoring of the two churches, being a husband, being a father, being an entrepreneur, how do you make sure you are spending the, I guess, adequate amount of time with God? Or how do you gauge like, okay, I'm too busy to where now I'm not in tune with God? Is there a way that you measure, because a lot of pastors, they get into the hustle and the bustle of pastoring and then don't have that time to spend time with God. So, and I know as a husband, as a father, and I've seen you keep crazy hours. You either up real early in the morning, I see you up late in the middle of the night, and I've tried it. I try to stay up after everybody goes to sleep. I try to get up before everybody gets up, and it's like those are the mornings everybody else wants to get up. How do you find time to just get along with God when it's so much all the time?
Yes, sir. Well, as you said, you see me up late at night, and for some reason, when everyone is asleep and the day is over, it seems like the best time to hear God. It seems like the best time for me to work. I actually get more work done in those late hours than I do during the day.
Okay.
So with my things to do list, because I'm organized, I plan what I'm going to do with where I will have the most energy throughout the day. And that's most of the time late at night. So
when do you sleep? If you up during the night, when do you sleep?
Now, honestly, a regular bedtime, my wife will tell you a regular bedtime when I'm working is somewhere around 2, 3 a.m. And then I'm up because I do my kids. in the mornings. So I'm up about 7:30 every day. Now, because I am 33, I do get naps throughout the day.
Okay. So because I know back in November, didn't you take like a sabbatical?
Yes, sir. And that's another thing. My Dr. Joe Ratliff, who's a friend of my father's, told my father years ago that every 90 days he needs to take a break. And that's something we have employed for our family. So every 90 days, either me and my wife are gone, we take a weekend to get away, or our family goes out, or I go out myself. And I always take 1 week sabbatical in the summer. That week sabbatical, I do nothing. No, Bishop, I'm lazy. I don't do nothing. I just watch TV. I may go to the mall. I'm ordering all my food to the hotel. I'm doing nothing. I'm lazy. And then November is the time where I take away from preaching on Sundays and preaching throughout the week. And I just take that month and hear God. I hear God, and ideas are coming out, and I'm able to work on things. That's how I'm able to finish books.
Okay.
Things of that nature. All of that goes into that 1 month.
So that month you're going to church, you're just not preaching, or you don't even
I'm
go
not,
to church?
I don't go to church. Now, for the most, sometimes I may go to another church.
Okay.
And my wife didn't understand it at first, but it's different when you go to church and you have to work,
right,
versus going to church and getting to worship.
Right. Just being in the crowd, taking it in.
Yes, sir. And I also use that time to, and last year was I was supposed to, but the pandemic hit. I was supposed to go to different ministries because one of the things that I love is exposure. Okay. So I was scheduled to go to different ministries to see how they operate, to go to churches that don't know me. So I'll never be called to the front or anything like that, and just learn and glean and take in.
I love that. So you don't have to worry about your church falling apart while you're gone for a month. Like how do you structure your church to sustain itself while you're away?
Yes, sir. Last year was my first year doing the full month.
Okay.
But I knew early on, because although I'm pastoring, I'm still a son. I'm still my father's musician to this day. I will travel with him if he needs me. And I still serve him. So I already knew with my father's schedule that early on, I have to get my church to the place where they're self-sufficient. Okay. So I started out my first 2 years very heavy on leadership training, and very heavy on our church being self-sufficient, to the point where at sometimes, Bishop, I would send a message right before Bible study and say, I'm not coming.
just to do it.
Yes, sir. To make sure that they could flow, to make sure they can handle things. And then I would not answer questions on Sundays. Pastor, do you want us to do this? Do you want us to? I wouldn't answer, because they have to be able to flow as if I was there when I'm not there. They have to be able to flow and push the ministry forward without me micromanaging. I am a leader that I'm not good at micromanaging. I don't like to micromanage. And so our church has to be able to flow and be self-sufficient in that.
So that brings me to two things. You mentioned that the sabbatical was a time to write, and you also have been talking about culture. Your new book that's coming out. Tell us more about the new book that's coming out this week.
Culture Shift is coming out this Friday, and this has been about 2 years in the making. Culture Shift happened when I went to Chicago. I went to Chicago to be a part of a conference, and I sat in the conference, and the culture of the church before worship began, people were worshiping, people were running around the church, they were praising, and all they were doing was playing videos on the screens. The culture of the church was just so excited about worship, excited about the event, and it was like that throughout the whole conference. Now, the first night I sat in that church and I sat there and said, my church is boring. And, you know, I took everything in that week. And when I got back home, I did a preaching series called Culture Shift. Okay. Now, looking back at that series, I did that series prematurely.
Okay.
The church was not ready for that type of shifting. It was not ready for that. We were in the midst of transitioning. We were moving from building to building, and we were not ready for that. But we just came out of the season where we were ready for shifting of the culture. And so I began to address certain topics for our church, praise, worship, outreach, operation, things of that nature, and how we're supposed to do it, and really laying it out to them in a very practical manner so that they understand that, no, we're trying to actually shift the culture of this church. We're trying to do something different. And we wanted to change the trajectory of where we're going as a body. Culture is the strongest force of an organization. It's the breath of the organization. The culture, when people walk in, they will be attracted to the culture before they're attracted to the word.
Wow. Wow.
And if the culture is not set properly, people, and especially in this day and time, are not going to sit through what they don't like to get to what they like.
Right. Right.
So we were working hard, and I felt like it was an apostolic mandate to put this book together that may help other pastors through our journey. As a matter of fact, and I'm actually releasing this to you early. I haven't put this out yet, but Culture Shift is a book of inspiration and information. Okay, coming out this Friday. This Friday we are announcing Culture Shift, the playbook. Okay, and it is practical concepts, ideas of the how-to of church. It talks about hosting guests. It talks about honorariums. It talks about music ministry, media ministry, the how-to of it. So this Friday, we're releasing the inspiration behind shifting the culture of your church and getting you inspired, and the mindset and the biblical background of shifting the culture. And then we're going to release my leadership of Mount Moriah is actually writing the book with me of how to do finance ministry, how to do media ministry, and things of that nature. And this is volume 1 that will be coming out this year as well. And
where can they find that? The book comes out Friday. Where can I get
on my website? You can go to my website. It will be AaronMcNairJr.com. You can actually go pre-order it right now. You can go pre-order it right now, AaronMcNairJr.com. Yep, and the book will be there.
Okay, awesome. So when we talk about culture, I appreciate everything that you said. And one of the things you talked about your own church.
Yes, sir.
Like you said, was being boring. But at that time, you're talking about your Raleigh church because you hadn't taken the Goldsboro church yet.
Yes, sir.
Even though that was a relaunch, that's basically a church that you started. So what happens as a pastor, and I've wrestled with this, what happens when you started the church and the church takes on the persona of the pastor, at least initially, the culture evolves, and then one day you walk in your own church and say, I hate the culture of my own church.
Yes, sir.
Who's to blame for that? Is that the pastor for developing a culture that you don't like? Is that from what you celebrate, what you tolerate, and how can you change it? And you pointed to worship, for example. How do you change that culture to where you want it to be?
Yes, sir. Well, I think this is the thing with the mindset of shifting the culture. First of all, is not that you now are blaming yourself for where the culture is. Okay. Because the culture is where it is based upon your exposure at that time. Okay. When I became exposed to something else, whenever you're exposed to something greater than what you have, you immediately begin to hate what you have. Okay. You know, and that's how God is. God will expose you to something greater. And when he exposes you to something greater, you lose the taste for what you had.
Wow.
And that's where the shifting of the culture comes from. And truth of the matter is, we're putting a title on it and we're putting a book on it now. But a lot of us as pastors have been through that, to where we came to our church and we made changes based upon new exposure that we have, new things that we learned, and that was shifting the culture. That was shifting the culture, and we just have to embrace that throughout ministry. We're going to have to shift the culture. I love where our church is right now, but as I grow, I know that I'm going to come back and have to change some other things. I preached a sermon called "Shift to the Right," and I talked about the disciples and how Jesus says, "Cast your net on the right side."
Okay.
And they had been fishing all night long, but he says, cast it on the right side. Now, the opposite of right is not necessarily wrong.
Mm-hmm.
The opposite of right is left. There's some things that we need to now leave behind because it's no longer for the culture and for the future of the church. So now shift to the right.
So that's shifting. You mentioned you got the consecration prayer.
Yes, sir.
You talked about the preaching series. Then you talked about exposure. Are those the three key things to shifting a culture? Because you can have your church go on a fast, you can preach it, but then sometimes your church hasn't experienced what you've experienced. So Absolutely. Is it important to take them to these places to kind of see how it's done so that they can embrace it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you for saying that, because we went to Pastor J. Patrick's conference 2019. Mm-hmm. I had some of my staff with me there. The amazing thing was, one of my staff he's on my leadership team and he's new to church. So being at the conference, he came up to me at the conference and said, "Pastor, thank you for bringing us here, because I heard what you said, but now I see."
Okay.
What you said. And so it does good for me to be exposed, but it's also great to make sure your leaders are exposed as well. And so we do one conference a year where I take leaders to that conference, and it has been Church Builder Summit. We do that once a year. We did it virtually last year.
Right. Same thing.
Yeah. So just to get their mind, they have to see what I see, because if not, I can come back on fire, as my father would say. And all of my leaders who haven't seen anything will be fire extinguishers. Mm. And then you go in a cycle all over again. You're going off, flying here, flying there, getting all this exposure, and they have no clue of how to operate and meet the expectations of your level of excellence because they have not seen it.
So then what happens when you have people in your church that have a grasshopper mentality? They can see it, but still not think that our church can achieve it.
That's where teaching comes in. As a matter of fact, I preached a sermon called "I'm Not a Grasshopper." Mm-hmm. And yesterday we talked from the subject, "Don't settle." And we preached against the poverty mentality. And poverty has nothing to do with economical status, but it has everything to do with you thinking that you're not good enough, or there's not enough for you to move forward. Like, you can't move forward. Like, you can't obtain this. It can be attained, but you think you can't do it. Mm-hmm. And that, I talked to my church because I told them there's no way for us to grow if you have a poverty mentality.
Right.
If you think that where we are, this is all that God has for us and we can't have anything better than this, you have to shift your mindset. I talked about the law of substitution. The law of substitution says that you can only have one thought in your mind at a time. The moment you're thinking negative, you're thinking negative. The moment you're thinking positive, you're thinking positive. But you have the power to substitute negative thoughts with positive thoughts. And I talked to them about even the law of concentration, that whatever you focus on the most grows in your life experience. So that's where that exposure comes into play. You have to surround yourself with people that will call you up.
Wow. I love that. I love that. Which then leads to the next part, selecting your team. Now, I assume in Raleigh, you've had a chance to kind of form your team, whereas in Goldsboro, you kind of inherited a team. What's the difference in the dynamics in, you're an expansion team and you get to draft your players versus, you know, you're being traded to a team, and here's the players already in place. How do you navigate that dynamic, working with what you got versus bringing in who you want to work with?
Yes, sir. And I think that the training and development is just different in between the two.
Okay.
For example, in Raleigh, I have people on my staff who know more about their particular area of ministry than I do.
Okay.
That's what I need. I need that type of person in that, because I can express to you the vision, but you can tell me a better way to get there.
I love that.
So I have those people around me in the Raleigh location, and I was able to develop that even when training and developing them. In the Goldsboro location, as you said, I inherited leaders. And to God be the glory, I inherited great leaders who are open to change, open to, and when I went in with the mindset of shifting the culture, they were on board with saying, we do need to shift the culture. The founder said, we need to shift the culture. So it helped in developing and them being open to change. It was good because they were already a trend-setting church. They were already a church that does things out of the box. So me coming in saying, hey, this is how we're going to shift this. This is how we're going to do this. Of course, you have some resistance from some. Right. Overall, the church is on board with, hey, what do I need to learn? Where do I need to grow? What do we need to improve? Because the ultimate goal is to get to the vision.
So what do you say to those when they hear shifting the culture means watering down the word, changing the doctrine, lowering standards? Some people, that's what they hear. But Jesus the same yesterday, today, and forevermore. God don't change. So what part of the church are we changing, and what part of the church are we leaving intact? How do you navigate that?
Well, using wisdom, because I'm a son, I understand that, number one, you have been following one leader for 37 years. He's the founder of the church. And so I cannot run into that location like a inexperienced young preacher and just go in there and start changing everything.
Right.
Honor the past, and honor the past. And I really take time to show honor to the founder. I employ principles and things that he's done. But this is one of the things that I taught, and one of the things that he told me as well, is that, as you said, Jesus says, I'm the same yesterday, today, and forever. He's the same, but his methods are not the same.
Right. Okay.
So Deeper Life is the same church, but our methods have to change.
Okay.
And my father said, anything that does not embrace change is worse than the dead, because even the dead change. If you don't believe it, go dig up your great grandma. She does not look the same way that she did when you put her in the ground. Even the dead change. So change has to come. Change has to happen, but it has to happen in the proper timing.
Okay.
And I'm being very sensitive with our Goldsboro location to make sure that in that timing, I am not dishonoring what has already been set in motion. I'm not dishonoring the leader. So our founder, I walk beside him. Okay. He walked beside me. So that he has his hand of approval on everything that we do. That's very important. It's very important for them to see the founder say, this is great, this is good, this is what we need to do. Because we ultimately pushing the church forward is making sure that his vision continues. Right.
And that's one of the blessings of having made the transition while he's alive.
Yes, sir.
So that he can be there to say, go for it. That's good. That's good. Whereas if it was done afterwards, you know, you wouldn't know how he felt about it, and people would be perhaps more resistant to those changes. Now, you mentioned honoring the founder. You also have a conference coming up this Saturday about shepherd's care. Why is that important, and how do you develop a culture of shepherd's care? And let me add this as well, especially for a person who starts a church. You're so used to giving and sacrificing. At what point do you say, okay, y'all can start doing some things for me now?
Yes, sir. So the birthing of this coming Saturday, the Shepherd's Care Intensive, comes from how we developed over the years in our Raleigh location. At the beginning, my father assigned a lady in my church and said, your job is to take care of the shepherd. She was new to that position. She was new to a lot. And of course, we're just getting started. And he said, that's your assignment. Your assignment is to take care of the shepherd. And she started to develop a passion for it. She started to read up on it. She started to educate herself. And she got to the place where she is now, where people are actually calling her to do so. But it's very important because, as you said, in a church where you started the church, you're trying to build the culture of the church. And of course, me going in, my mentality was, I don't need no pastor's anniversary.
Right.
I don't need any special service because I want to build the church. I want to build the church. Well, in that type of situation, you need somebody that will speak for you. Okay. Because in building the church, if you do not build a culture of honor and build a culture of shepherd's care, then you automatically build your people to dishonor you.
There's nowhere in between. You said the opposite. Wow.
Right. Because because now your people are becoming accustomed to you turning down help or you turning down honor, and I had to embrace that. Number one, I grew up, my father's churches was a little traditional back then with how they did pastor's anniversary. Right. And I didn't want to go through a week of service. I didn't want anybody coming at me talking about they came up short with them. I didn't want to go through enough of that. Right. So my mindset was, let me just focus on building the church. But you have to have that person in the church or those people in the church that will say, we're going to make sure that while the pastor is taking care of the church takes care of the pastor. It's a dual responsibility. My father preached so many years ago, a dual responsibility. It is the shepherd's job to take care of the people, but it is also the people's job to take care of the shepherd. And so many churches, especially young churches or smaller churches, think that we have to wait till we get big. Right. To take care of the leader. So this Saturday, what we're doing is putting together so many concepts and ideas that we have used throughout the years to take care of the leader. Let me say this. 2021 is the official year that I have a salary at my Raleigh location. Okay. All right. However, they have taken care of me throughout the years because of the other concepts and other ideas that they put in place until the church got to the place where it can actually sustain. Okay. So that's why this Saturday, and it's going to help the small church and it's going to help the medium-sized church and the large church, because a lot of large churches just think that taking care of the pastor is salary only. Okay. So is it too late to register for the conference? We have a few seats left
for the in-person, right?
For the in-person, but you can register all the way up until Friday for the online sessions.
And this is for who? Just the pastor, or is it for the designated person or the designated team?
I have a pastor who has made it mandatory for his entire leadership to come. It's for anyone who operates in, because it's not just about the concepts and the ideas. It's also about the mentality that the church has to grasp the culture of honor. It's very important that the church understands the culture of honor, because if you just have a team that understands the culture of honor, then when your pastor drives up in his new car, then the church, right, who has the poverty mentality, who doesn't understand the culture of honor, now are looking at the pastor sideways because of what the church or the leadership has come to the conclusion to do.
So I shared the flyer and offered. So I got some of my members watching. So now I need to go back and say, y'all must go. I said, well, if anyone's interested, we will sponsor you. But I like what you're saying, because I think you're right, because some saw it as, well, I'm not involved with the compensation package, and I know that's one of the topics, so why do I need to go? But if you're talking about the culture of honoring, and I've seen how your church has, I think, bought your family groceries and
Yes,
things
sir.
for the children. I mean, it's what, once a quarter or so often they just
Yes, sir.
bombard you with stuff.
Yes, sir. And let me say, Pastor Bishop, that it's important for anybody who is in church to have the understanding of the information, because many times we come to our own conclusions.
Mm-hmm.
With social media, you got these memes going around and it puts a lot of things in people's minds. So to see the behind the scenes of
Right.
how church actually operates, how church is actually supposed to go, is very important for, even if you're not in leadership, to be a part of this so you have the knowledge.
Okay. All right. I love that. I love that. This is the first time you've had this conference?
Yes. Yes.
So let me ask this. You have this conference, and then you have Equip. That's your, and then you have Lead. So you got a conference, but then you also have a business. Tell me about the other conference and the business that you have.
Okay. Equip is an online group that we have where, and I've been slacking on it, I can admit, but I'm supposed to go in that group and just do what I'm doing this past Saturday, or this coming Saturday.
Okay.
Those in that group right now are how to do media ministry, how to, I have some things on shepherd's care. I have some things on administration, things of that nature that help you really operate in the church in a proficient way. So that's Equip. Impact Consulting Group was birthed in the pandemic.
Okay.
Because I started to assist many pastors, many leaders in how to function during this pandemic.
Okay.
How to set up online church, how to do things of that nature. So the business was developed, forced,
Okay. Okay.
because I was supposed to do it some time ago, but I just slacked on it. But the pandemic demanded that I move forward in it. So with the business, I help build websites for ministries, and do trainings for leadership, things of that nature. I'm actually going to be working with a ministry in Barbados to help them relaunch their church. So taking them through that entire process, that's what I was telling you about in the beginning, that I'm not really missing the itinerant part of just going to preach.
Right. Right.
But this is what I have a passion for, to help leaders, to help churches, to help ministries.
So this creativity, I said you're a genius. The creativity, the innovation. And I have some entrepreneurs who are watching. I teach entrepreneurship. And we talk about creativity and innovation. Is it innate? Is it a gift from God? Is it something to be cultivated? This ability to teach, to train, to mentor, how would you describe it? Is it a gift from God? Is it something that you inherited? Is it in your DNA? Is it something that you cultivate? How did you become you?
I think it will, for me, I think it was something that I allowed to be cultivated.
Okay.
And it came from being a musician.
Okay.
Because a musician who is passionate about church, I had to sit many Sundays and observe.
Okay. Okay.
So while I'm on the organ, I'm watching how church is going, how church is flowing, how church is operating. And so because I had a passion to help my father, I began to pick out things that need to be touched up, need to be done different, need to be operated different, because my father taught me about the spirit of excellence. Okay. So what can I catch that he hasn't caught? So that's where that developed. Hey, we might need to do this a little different, because when they did it this way, this happened. So how can we come up with different concepts, different ideas to make this flow differently? So that helped at an early age. So I started to help with service flow in the church. I started to help with how a presider is supposed to preside.
Okay.
Things of that nature. So going deep into how the church is supposed to function, because everything that we do, the end goal is still souls.
Right.
But I cannot grasp your attention and I cannot pull you into the kingdom if you're thrown off by how we operate.
Right.
So that's where that passion. And so I began to study. I began to study other ministries. I began to read and educate myself on the process of getting church to the spirit of excellence. One of the things that I teach when I go to leaders, do leadership training, is a prepared church. God will not give us what we have not proven we're prepared to handle. There's no need for you to ask for 200 members if you're functioning right now as if you have 100.
Gotcha.
If you have 75 members and you want God to bless you with 275, then you have to function now like you have 275 members. So what does that look like for our one of the things that my brother says is that I'm a pastor that has his leadership staff at the church the day before service.
Right.
Because if you're saying that you want to have 200 members, then you can't get to church when church is supposed to start.
Right.
The church has to be prepared to receive those who are coming. So that's where that creativity and those concepts, ideas develop from.
And one of the things I love about you is a lot of times people who are programmed that way, they become very critical. I see you as a consultant and not a critic. I see you there to help and not to hurt. And that's why I love what you're doing. It's not like you're throwing off on the ministry or throwing off on the church. You're trying to show them how to go from where they are to where they need to be, to go from good to great. Let me ask this. You talked about the consulting and helping churches develop the cultures. The perfectionism. How do you keep yourself from being obsessed with perfection? Like everybody wants to be excellent, but is there a certain point where you become obsessed with perfection and to where you almost take God out of the equation? Is that even possible?
It is possible. It is possible. And that's why I told you that our theme for the year was closing the gaps, growth, accountability, passion. And that last point was spirituality. And it's amazing that you said that, because yesterday I was explaining to our church that we cannot be a church that functions in the spirit of excellence absent of the spirit. We cannot be a church that operates perfectly, but there's no power here. There's no spirituality here. So that's where that consecration comes into play. That's where the prayer, the corporate prayer comes into play, because we have to make sure that above all of our spiritual, all of our spirit of excellence things that we put into motion, the end goal is still that God may be glorified. The end goal is still that people may be delivered, that people may be set free. The reason that we're trying to make sure that we do this properly is so that people can experience the raw power of God.
I love that. I love that. I love that. Now, you mentioned music, being a musician. You also have a third thing coming out this weekend. When did you become a gospel artist?
Well, I was my father's minister of music for 18 years.
Okay.
My father fired a musician on Sunday, and I knew how to play one song. So I played that one song that Sunday, and he got up and preached. And he said, from this day forward, you need to learn how to play every song every week. So that's how I became minister of music. I was always a musician. I would start out on the drums.
Okay.
And then I moved to being interested in the organ. And down through the years, I started playing the organ. About 13 years ago, I was coming home from Virginia, and I actually started singing this tune in my head, the hook to it. And so when I got back into town, I stopped by the church, jumped on the organ, and I wrote the lyrics to this song called He Promised. Back then, I taught it to my church choir. And so we would travel and sing that song, and that was the end of it. On last year, one of my friends texted me a video of him playing the song, because he used to play with us back then.
Okay.
And he said, man, you need to do something with this song. And so I got with Sound Mind production team, which is a business started by two of my friends. and they went back and redid the music to the song. And I actually found the video from years ago where our church choir sung the song. I may put that out later.
Okay.
And then I reached out to my cousin, Joyce Obi, to do the lead vocals on it. And we went into the studio. Some good friends of mine went into the studio and we recorded the song. He promised it would be out this Friday. And I'm telling you, it sounds amazing. I'm a person who loves church choirs.
Right. Okay.
All right. Give me the choir sound any day. I love church choirs. And so this is a good choir song for your church. It's going to be amazing. You can actually pre-order it right now.
Okay.
On all media outlets, iTunes, go get it, pre-order it. And on Friday, it's going to be here.
So is that another avenue you see yourself going down? Music writing, production, producing?
No.
You can't be a one-hit wonder. We're not going to let you be a one-hit wonder.
Now they told me I need to start back writing music.
Okay.
Now in July this year, our Raleigh location is doing a live recording.
Okay.
And it stemmed from our worship team actually started developing songs in worship.
Okay.
So we started to record those songs, and now they're working on getting those things down packed. And in July, MMCC Raleigh will have a live recording. That live recording is going to be a little different. Mm-hmm. You remember, Bishop, back in the day, preachers used to do live recordings.
Yes.
On records and on tapes. So we're doing a mixture of the two. So the live recording is called the Live at 5 Experience. So our intercessors will be praying, our worship team will be singing, and I will be recording a message.
I love that. I love that. That it made me think about it. You're so right. I remember how churches would, come up with the tapes and the albums, a couple songs from the choir. The preacher preached about 15 minutes. You sell them out the trunk of the car. To others. And that's something that now it's done through the EP. It's not tapes. It's not CDs. But now you're doing it through this electronic media outlet. Wow, Aaron McNair, I am so honored to have you on with us today. I'm not going to monopolize your time. There was a question that came up at our marriage conference, and you shared at our marriage conference.
Yes, sir.
Last year, you talked about the importance of family. You talked about the importance of one of the I'm still there. Oh, okay. Like I disappeared. Yes. All right. So
I think his camera went out. I think they're trying to get it back on. But I'll say thank you all for tuning in tonight. Please visit our website, AaronMcNairJr.com, and you'll see the song, you'll see the book, you'll see the pastoral intensive this Saturday. And I'm looking forward to chatting with any of you. Just inbox me. I don't mind speaking with you concerning leadership, concerning pushing your church forward, shifting the culture of your church. I'm looking forward to talking with anybody. Here he is. There he is.
No, I'm glad. You see, able to pivot right on the moment. Appreciate it. I thank God for you. But this was a question from the marriage conference. You shared at our marriage conference last year. And one of the questions this year, we allowed some of the courting couples that not quite engaged, but leaning that way. You just celebrated 8 years of marriage with your wonderful wife. And yes. She's been instrumental, a minister in her own right, instrumental in everything that you do. And so the question was, and I'm asking this question for some of those that know they have a calling on their life, but don't know exactly where God is going to ultimately take them. How do they know that they have the right one with them for the journey?
My father said this to me when I was dating my wife. He said, if you can think about life without them and it's not a tear-jerking experience, then they're not the one.
Mm.
And I, as dating my wife, knowing where my future was going, I saw how she handled certain situations between the two of us. I saw how her drive for life, her drive for God, conversation, that communication is very important, because you need to know, hey, if we get this, what do you think about that? You know, where's your mindset concerning raising kids?
Mm-hmm.
Where's your mindset concerning employment? You know, so you have to be very upfront and ask those questions ahead of time. You don't want to try to do it off of infatuation to find out if this is the one. No, ask the questions, have the conversations. You know, my mother always told me, start out like you can hold out. So you have to be able to show that person that, hey, this is the me that you're going to get, and be very upfront with them.
I love that. I love that. Thank you. Thank you so much for everything. I don't want, because you told me she gave you the exception for tonight. So I'm not going to keep you away from her any longer. What do you see next for yourself? You're 33.
Yes, sir.
33, pastoring 2 churches. You're an overseer. You're an author, gospel artist, entrepreneur, consultant, husband, father. And I even thought about this. You worn the office of a prophet. You wore the office of an evangelist. You're a teacher. You're a pastor. You have the apostolic mantle on you.
Yes, sir.
What's next? Where do you see yourself 20 years from now? Where do you see yourself at your father's present age? Ooh.
Wow. I see myself pouring into the next generation.
Okay.
I see myself being a mentor for those who are coming up behind me. As my father has been for those coming up behind him, I see myself doing the same, and still surrounding myself with those who will push me forward. Because if you're talking about my father's age, I'm still going to be considered the prime of ministry. My father is only 53.
Okay.
So considerably in the prime of ministry, and still pushing forward, not adding anything new to my plate, as you just listed everything.
Not a third church, or do you see yourself still pastoring both churches?
Now I do see church planning.
Okay.
I do see church planning, and I see the development of sons and daughters who will be sent out to move in their calling and their anointing. I think that God is going to continue to push me in a mentoring stage and season, developing and training leaders to go out and do.
I love that. So if and this was a question that I had, if you could only get an A in one subject, pastoring, being a father, being a husband, being an entrepreneur, you can only get an A in one of those subjects. Which subject must you get an A in?
Whew, just one. I would say I would take an A in fathering.
Okay.
Yes. I think if I had an A in fathering, my wife would accept the B plus.
And then the rest will take care of itself. This is
Yes, sir.
Man, Aaron McNair. All right, the last question. Will the Lakers repeat?
Absolutely. In
And
Jesus' name.
Who will they defeat to repeat?
Wow. Wow. I honestly can't say. I want them to defeat the Nets. That's what I want.
Okay. All right. So Lakers in 5 over the Nets.
Yes, Lakers in 5.
He's on the record. So come June, we're gonna replay. Aaron McNair said Lakers in 5 over the Nets. Anything else you want to say to the people? Anything that God lays on your heart? Before we do, we're gonna put your Cash App on the screen. We give opportunities if Pastor McNair, Overseer McNair, Dr. McNair has said something that's been a blessing to you, and you want to sow into his ministry. We'll give you that opportunity. He's good ground. He's good people. He's doing great things, but you can see the trajectory and the hand of God on his life. You might want to just pay for multiple copies of the book, sponsor multiple people to the conference, just pay for multiple copies of the music that's coming out, or just, hey, honor him in his ministry. Say, hey, here's some money for your wife to go out to dinner this weekend. So his Cash App is there. But in closing, Dr. McNair, what would you say to those who are watching, whatever God lays on your heart, to close us out tonight?
I want to answer a question that I saw come up. Someone asked, between the two churches, is there a level of jealousy with me having to be pulled between the two? I'm seeing that the Goldsboro location, I will say, is getting used to me being used in different platforms because Apostle, their founder, was one who had just deeper life.
Right.
He wasn't between two churches. He started out with two churches, but for the most part, he had deeper life. So there is growing to the place where they're understanding my kingdom assignment is not just to one house. My Raleigh location is a church that was birthed in a family of churches.
Right.
So when I accepted deeper life, they were jumping over chairs and happy, excited. So there's no jealousy. The two churches are understanding the kingdom assignment of their leader. And so I feel that it is my assignment to make sure that I never slight one for the other, and to balance myself to make sure that I'm doing it across the board in a spirit of excellence.
Can I ask you something? Do you see that as a trend, in that years ago there used to be the one preacher that had multiple churches, and then it seemed like pastors got to where it was one church, one pastor, and now we're starting to see certain pastors taking on more than one church, not just more than one location, but actually more than one church. Do you see that as a trend? Is that a shortage of qualified men and women? What's going on?
I don't see it as a trend. I see it almost as a correction based on my experience, because when I was coming up and pastors had several churches, they were the preacher, not the pastor. Okay. Yeah. They went here first and third Sunday. They went there second and fourth Sunday. So they were just preaching, and the deacons and things ran the church.
Right.
Then it got to the place where, as you said, pastors took on one assignment. Now in this new generation, we are learning how to pastor everything that is set before us, each location that is set before us. So I am administrator and pastor at both locations. And I think that's the difference.
I love that. So now, closing, what would you say to the audience? Any word that you would just share, or prayer, or anything you want to close out with?
I would say to go back to your home church and be a weightlifter. Be one that can help carry the weight of ministry with your pastor. Moses was instructed by God to go find 70 mature people, bring them to the temple. I'm going to talk to them, Moses, and I'm going to take your spirit, Moses, and put it on them. So in order to run the kingdom of God, you have to have God's spirit. But to run your church and push your church forward, you need your pastor's spirit. So I say to those who are listening to go back and develop the right perception concerning your leader, concerning your man of God, your woman of God, and make sure that you gain your leader's spirit so that you can be a tool in pushing the ministry forward.
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, let's thank none other than Overseer Dr. Aaron McNair II, author, pastor, entrepreneur, husband, father, consultant, gospel artist, Laker fan, musician, and man of God. My friend, my brother, my colleague. Let's thank God for him, Overseer Aaron McNair. God bless you, sir. May God bless all that you put your hand to do, all that you envision. Let the visions that God give you, let them come to pass. May God give you the health and the strength and the assistance and the help, the financial resources, the manpower to conquer and to subdue every territory God places in your hand. I pray God's blessings on your life and ministry. And I just look forward to cheering you on and say, man, go ahead, boy. Keep up the good work. Praying for you. Love you, sir. God
Thank
bless.
you so much. Thank you so much.
Bless you. Thank you for joining us tonight for Mantle Mondays. I pray that you were blessed by our interview with Dr. Aaron McNair Jr. We invite you to join us next week as we pick up our Women's History Month series. Next week, we'll be interviewing Dr. Matisa Wilburn. She is the Chief Intercessor for the Young Leaders Conference. She's also a wife and mother, entrepreneur, also a PhD, former college professor. And so we'll hear from her story, her testimony as an intercessor, as a minister, entrepreneur, a professional, and woman of God. And then we close out the month of March with Bishop Bonnie Hunter, the first consecrated bishop in the International Bible Way Church. We have some great guests lined up for the month of April. We also have some great guests lined up for the month of May. If this broadcast has been a blessing to you, we would love to hear from you. Feel free to connect with us on social media, Travell Travis on Instagram, Twitter. You can follow our pages on Facebook, Wherever the Mantle Fall, Don't Eat the Baby, Law Office of Travell Travis, as well as my personal page. You can email us as well as call us. You can visit our website, TravellTravis.com. Send us a message there and let us know if these interviews are being a blessing to you. I know they're being a blessing to me, even though I've been in ministry now for 20 years, pastoring for 12, teaching entrepreneurship for 18 years at Hampton University. I am been thoroughly blessed by these great kingdom ambassadors and sharing their stories and their struggles and their success. I want to thank my wife, the executive producer of this program. Without God and without her, I couldn't do the things that the Lord has allowed me to do. So I extend my appreciation to her on tonight. If you're unable to watch these broadcasts live, we invite you to go back and watch the recordings. You can find the recordings on our Where Will the Mantle Fall Facebook fan page. And you can also go to the Law Office of Travell Travis YouTube channel and watch all of the interviews that we've conducted since the month of December. And so always keep in mind that it's never too early to plan for success. God bless you. Have a smile upon you.
Looking to start a church, business, or nonprofit organization in 2021? Do you need help forming an LLC, applying for a copyright or trademark, revising church bylaws, crafting a succession plan, or developing a compensation package for your pastor and staff? Contact the Law Office of Travell Travis, a Richmond-based legal boutique focused on the needs of pastors, entrepreneurs, creatives, and our community. Let's make your vision a reality in 2021. Visit TravellTravis.com. That's TravellTravis.com.